Banderas in for Harris Faulkner today. So President Trump's legal team submitting written answers to special counsel Robert Mueller's questions amid the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Now, this comes after months of negotiations back and forth between the president's team, Robert Mueller's team, and speculation on top of all of that on whether or not the president would agree to sit down and talk face-to-face with Mueller in an interview. But legal scholar Alan Dershowitz saying this: the president's attorneys made the right decision in agreeing to written responses only. Watch.
You answer the questions in writing, and although the president said it was his answers, obviously the lawyers vetted them. That's designed to avoid a perjury trap. So I think this has been a win-win for President Trump when it comes to any kind of legal or impeachment vulnerability.
Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live in Washington with the very latest. Hey, Catherine.
Well, thanks, Julie. This morning, the legal assessment is mixed, with a former prosecutor telling Fox the data points indicate the special counsel investigation is now winding down.
The other things we see are, for example, special counsel Mueller is evidently going to allow General Flynn to be sentenced. It looks like Manafort is heading towards sentencing. I can tell you as an experienced former prosecutor that if you're intending to bring another big case and you think you have these witnesses who would be cooperating witnesses in that case, you don't let them get sentenced.
But a leading constitutional law expert is focused today on any potential inconsistencies, arguing legal exposure may persist. Jonathan Turley writing, quote, "If Trump answers with any specificity, his responses will be overlaid with the testimony of a host of cooperating witnesses, from former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn to former Trump fixer Michael Cohen. If statements by Trump do not match up, Congress will then be left with a stark choice over who is lying on the issue." Meantime, the president's legal team issued a brief statement confirming the president's written responses are now with the special counsel, and significantly the questions dealt with Russia-related topics, not the firing of former FBI Director James Comey as part of any obstruction investigation. Quote, "It has been our position from the outset that much of what has been asked raised serious constitutional issues and was beyond the scope of a legitimate inquiry," Rudy Giuliani said. "This remains our position today. The president has nonetheless provided unprecedented cooperation." The legal team went on to emphasize that they provided more than 30 witnesses to date, as well as more than 1.4 million pages of records, and now the president's written responses. Shortly before he left for Florida, the president fielded questions with reporters, pardon me, my brain is cramping up in advance of Thanksgiving, on the White House lawn.
The written answers to the witch hunt that's been going on forever. No collusion, no nothing. They've been finished. Finished them yesterday. The lawyers have them. I assume they'll turn them in today or soon.
What those close to the president's legal team also emphasize that while Jonathan Turley says that there will be a comparison by Mueller of the president's answers with other testimony, you have to assume that they've sort of made the same calculus and the same review before submitting them. And I apologize for the brain cramp, even before the turkey.
Maybe it's like a pre-hangover to the turkey.
Maybe I'm just getting prepared.
That happens to me without the turkey, so don't sweat it.
I'm just getting prepared. Okay, thank you.
All right, Catherine Herridge,
You're welcome.
thank you. All right, so let's get more on this. John Sale, former assistant U.S. attorney, thank you very much for talking to us today.
My pleasure, Julie.
So does this mean Mueller's probe is nearing its end? Could that day finally be, upon us?
Well, the signs are heading in that direction. We have to put it into context. As your reporter indicated, with 1 million documents being produced and many witnesses coming from the White House talking to Mueller, the president could have asserted objections or put other roadblocks in the way, and none of that was done. And one thing which I think many people get wrong, these written responses were voluntary. So the prosecutor here got more than they're entitled to. And most of the time when I represent a high-powered individual or a CEO, we never give any responses, and the prosecutors do their thorough investigation, and they conclude their investigation, and nobody's criticized. So what I think here is that this has gone on for over a year. They cannot indict the president. They ought to write their report and let the court of public opinion decide, is there anything here or not? And let me point out one other thing. the answers are restricted to so-called collusion and not obstruction, not because the president is being treated differently than anyone else.
Right.
It's because the so-called collusion took place before he became president. After he became president, there now could be a lot of constitutional challenges.
Right.
And I think that they figure that why did they cooperate so much?
Right.
Because they wanted to try and bring this to an end.
Yeah, I'm just wondering
unreasonable.
what these answers are really going to get. And Robert Mueller hasn't been able to prove that there was any collusion. He's found no evidence. He's found zero research that supports that theory. I'm not sure how these questions are going to move this case forward. It's almost as if you wonder why bother asking the questions when you know the result. I mean, his lawyers helped him with the answers. They're clearly not going to put him in a position where he's going to potentially lie. Jay Sekulow, one of the president's lawyers, said the questions were on Russia-related topics of the Mueller investigation. Rudy Giuliani says the special counsel's probe has gone too far. Do you agree with him?
I think that something like the Manafort trial in Virginia, I mean, I can't hear anybody explain what that has to do with anything that the special counsel was appointed to investigate. But that doesn't mean that people can't be investigated, but it didn't need a special counsel for something like this. And one thing that people haven't pointed out, a special counsel can do a very thorough investigation, and if they then determine that the subject or the target, here the president, did not violate the law, the special counsel has not failed in their job.
Right.
They should just be here to find out the truth.
Meantime,
and do a report. And it should, over a year is enough.
There's also sources telling the New York Times that the president told the White House counsel this spring he wanted the Justice Department to prosecute Hillary Clinton and James Comey, but the president backed down after being warned it could actually lead to abuse of power charges and even impeachment. Now, there's been no immediate comment from the White House on that report. But my question to you is President Trump trying to use the DOJ to go after his political enemies?
Well, first of all, your question assumes that what's reported in the New York Times is accurate. So if it's not accurate, there's really nothing to discuss. If it is, there's some degree of truth to it, but nothing happened. Nothing came of it. And it's blown totally out of proportion. Don McGahn was quoted as saying the president's entitled to some degree of confidentiality. And when the Times first said that McGahn was cooperating, McGahn was quoted as saying in that article he never saw the president go beyond his legal authority. So I just think this is blown way out of proportion. There has been no abuse of power, contrary to when President Nixon actually set these agencies to investigate his enemies. Just hasn't happened.
John Sale, thank you very much, former Assistant U.S. Attorney. We appreciate you coming
Thank you for having me.
For more analysis on this, let's bring in Hugo Gurdon, Washington Examiner editorial director. Did I get your right name?
You did.
Pronunciation there? Oh, thank God. All right. You know, in the way that these questions were presented, is this about the normal way that you would go about this in this kind of investigation, do you believe?
Yeah, I think it is. The questions were presented, the legal team presented the answers, as has been noted. Those were restricted to events or questions related to events before the president took office. Everything after that is regarded as being protected by executive privilege, so there was, as has been said, nothing on obstruction of justice. It all related to Russia. I suspect that that Robert Mueller was very interested in any communication between President Trump or his team with Stone, Roger Stone, who has been the focus of attention just recently. I suspect, too, that he would be asking questions relating to the June 2016 meeting in Trump Tower, which Donald Trump Jr. was involved in. You know, we don't know whether this is going to lead to an early end or rather an imminent end to the investigation, because possibly the president's answers, even though vetted by the legal team, will produce further avenues of inquiry that Robert Mueller wants to follow.
Well, what kind of further inquiry would it potentially produce? More questions to the president, or could other people be somehow drawn into this investigation?
Certainly it could draw other people in. I suspect that the legal team at the White House has tried very hard to make sure this doesn't create a sort of spreading investigation and perpetuate it. But one of the things that the obvious question that follows this is Robert Mueller satisfied with the answers he gets? Potentially he is, but if he isn't, he may have some follow-up questions. And then the question becomes, Will the White House agree to answer those? Will the president provide more written answers, or will Robert Mueller ask for a sit-down interview? If he asks for a sit-down interview or insists on a sit-down interview, then you possibly have a constitutional clash. And you'll remember that past presidents, such as President Clinton, sat down for a taped interview, and there may be some pressure for that.
Okay, so far there have been some 1.4 million pages of evidence that have been turned over to the Mueller investigation. Now you've got the interview with the president and, of course, his legal team there aiding his answers. Is that not enough? Are these questions overreaching? Where does this go next?
Well, you'd think that they would be enough, and certainly 1.4 million documents is a lot of documents to go through. And what Rudy Giuliani is doing here by saying that the investigation has gone too far, that Robert Mueller is pushing too far, is he's doing some good defense lawyering. What he's saying is, despite the fact that we regard these questions as intrusive, despite the fact that we do not owe you any answers, we are such good guys that we're going above and beyond in our cooperation, and we're providing these things to you. But be warned, if you ask further questions, we are within our rights to freeze you out, because we actually have no obligation to answer these things. What he's doing is preparing the ground for the next stage, should there be a next stage.
Okay, so then let's talk about the next stage, because we no longer have Jeff Sessions there. Some people have believed that Matt Whitaker's appointment to replace Jeff Sessions presents a conflict of interest. I would like to say that Rod Rosenstein, if there's any conflict of interest, it would be, the finger would be pointed at Rod Rosenstein. And now Whitaker has come forward and said he has no problem with the investigation. In fact, he would go as far as to recuse himself, which certainly makes the president's team look unbiased. What do you make of just all of these sort of pieces into this puzzle?
Yeah, well, you go right to the heart of a problem here, or one of the issues. There are people who mistrust Rod Rosenstein, and he has a sort of a somewhat complex relationship with the president. Mr. Whitaker has been criticized because of the past comments he's made about the investigation, although, as you say, he's now, as it were, set himself straight with the investigation. I don't think that the White House or anyone associated with the president right now wants to give any grounds for complaint that they are obstructing this investigation. They seem to me pretty confident that there's nothing going to come from the Mueller investigation on terms of collusion. They haven't even answered questions on obstruction of justice and don't intend to. So the last thing they want to do is to raise the hackles of the Democrats in Congress any further, or change public opinion, which seems to have been, turning against this investigation. This is neither collusion nor obstruction of justice is registering very much in public opinion. It didn't play very much, and the Democrats didn't play it up in the election. So I think they just want it to go away.
All right. I think a lot of people want it to go away. I know the president does, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go away. Hugo Gurdon, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks a lot, Julie.
So lawmakers on both sides of the aisle demanding tougher action after President Trump signals he will not punish Saudi Arabia's crown prince over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. So how will Congress respond? We're going to be speaking to Representative Adam Kinzinger next. And this, Nancy Pelosi, she is getting closer to reclaiming the House Speaker's gavel as Marcia Fudge drops her potential challenge, and another detractor endorses her. So is it a done deal now? Our power panel joins us after the break.
Do you know which investment could be?
We're staying with Saudi Arabia. China and Russia would love to make $100 billion worth of military equipment from Saudi Arabia. We have the contracts. They wanted those contracts. That would be a big, fat, beautiful gift to Russia and to China. They're not going to get that gift. Just so you understand, it's about Make America Great Again. It's about America first.
President Trump there defending his decision to stand by Saudi Arabia after the killing of columnist Jamal Khashoggi, saying further action would be economically damaging to the U.S. This coming in spite of a CIA assessment that reportedly found Saudi Arabia's crown prince ordered Khashoggi's murder, and repeated calls from Republicans and Democrats for tougher action. Benjamin Hall is following the story for us from London with the latest. Hi, Benjamin.
Hi, Julian. President Trump's statement was certainly intended to be the final word on this, and he made it very clear why. He said national security, jobs, economy were all key issues behind the decision-making. But there's been a real backlash, both abroad, in the U.S., on both sides of the political aisle. Here, for example, is what Senator Corker said.
It is a delicate situation when we have a long-term ally that we've had for decades, but we have a crown prince that I believe directed the killing of a journalist, and the language that was used, it was as if they were writing a press release for Saudi Arabia, not for the United States.
Saudi Arabia is, of course, a key partner on many Middle Eastern issues, many of which the president laid out clearly in his statement yesterday. New Palestinian peace deal, the Yemeni ceasefire, pushing back against Iran, bringing down oil prices, the war on terror. But some felt this was an opportunity missed.
Saudi Arabia needs us more than we need them. It's not too much to ask an ally not to butcher a guy in a consulate. This is not World War II, so I'm not going to look away at what MBS did. We've got a historic opportunity here to tell the people in the Mideast there's a new sheriff in town. If you disrespect us and you trample over civilized norms, you're going to pay a price.
When the president's statement was released yesterday, the Turkish foreign minister was actually in Washington and met with Secretary Pompeo. He said that the killing should not be covered up for the sake of maintaining trade ties with Saudi Arabia.
This is a humanitarian issue. It is a murder. We cannot say our trade will increase. Let's cover it up. Let's ignore it.
And other politicians have said they would now push for a secondary international investigation, also possibly urge Congress to release the CIA report, even perhaps try to withhold Saudi arms sales. And it's important to point out Saudi Arabia has issued repeated denials that the royal family knew anything to do with this, and President Trump also saying that it was not 100% certain from the report that they were behind it. But I think we expect to see this story continue for some time to come. Julie?
Certainly indeed. All right. Thank you very much, Benjamin Hall. Let's bring in Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Thank you very much for talking to us. First of all, what do you make of the president's statement when he says we may never know all of the facts surrounding the murder of Mr. Jamal Khashoggi? In any case, our relationship is with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They have been a great ally in our very important fight against Iran. What's your reaction to President Trump's response?
I think in this case, it's the right policy and the wrong words. One of the things that America can do, we can't intervene everywhere there's a human rights issue or everywhere there's something we think is egregious. This was egregious. But we can, with our words, talk about our belief that, individual liberty, the idea that people have dignity, and the fact that we believe in freedom of the press, even outside of the United States. So I think that was a missed opportunity. But I want to be clear about this. There hasn't been enough talk about this. Who is driving the opposition to the president's policy? That's important to look at. You have some on the kind of fringe right, like Senator Paul, and you have some on the left that are basically, from the beginning of their career in politics, have wanted us to cut off all relationships with Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, Senator Paul, for instance, is calling for lifting sanctions against Russia, who murders journalists in Moscow, opposition figures, poisons people in the United Kingdom. So this isn't an issue of we have moral high ground from some of these folks. It's a desire to fundamentally shift America's interest in the Middle East.
The president cited the kingdom's influence over oil prices, telling the press, and I'm quoting, if we abandon Saudi, it would be a terrible mistake. He also said he wasn't going to destroy the economy of our country, or over our country, over Khashoggi, by giving up arms and the arms deals to Saudi Arabia. He tweeted this morning, and I want your reaction. Oil prices getting lower. Great. Like a big tax cut for America and the world. Enjoy. $54 was just $82. Thank you to Saudi Arabia. But let's go lower. Is he putting economic interests above the country's morals?
Look, I don't like that tweet, especially the part about thank you, Saudi Arabia. Again, we can maintain our relationship with Saudi Arabia in a very dangerous part of the world. It's that or Iran. I can point to 1,000 things Iran have done that are 50 times worse than Saudi Arabia. But I think it's also important when it comes to these issues that the United States maintains that even though we can't intervene in every situation where there's a tragedy, we hold to these very strong truths of human dignity. And I think bringing the economic message into it, even though that very well may be, the reason we have to align ourselves with Saudi Arabia, or we choose to, is the wrong message to send to the world, frankly, to the country. And I think this would have gone over with a lot less opposition or people being upset if we'd have focused on what Saudi did, how bad it was, and then said, but we can't because, and point out some of those reasons.
Right. I mean, the argument could be made that the United States, it is not our responsibility to get involved in every human rights violation and atrocity all over the world. Look what's happening in China. Look what's happening in North Korea. But then again, you know, sanctions have been brought down on some of those under the Crown Prince, but it seems the Crown Prince ultimately is going to get away with this if indeed the CIA, our own CIA, says that there is evidence that the Crown Prince ordered this murder. The question now is, does Congress get involved? How does Congress, or should Congress, respond?
Well, I don't necessarily think we should get involved because, as I mentioned, I like the policy of basically calling it out, what they should have called it out in more strong terms, but then understanding that we have to maintain that relationship. But I guarantee you there's going to be people on both ends of the political spectrum that in every spending bill they're going to try to cut off any kind of aid to Saudi Arabia. They're going to do this as an opportunity to inflict damage on the president because, frankly, a lot of folks, foreign policy has just become an issue of right versus left and not an issue of the United States of America.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, thank you very much for talking to us. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Anytime. You too. Thanks.
So President Trump blasting the federal judge who temporarily blocked his asylum ban. This as the White House warns the ruling will allow illegal immigrants to pour into the U.S. And President Trump is slamming a federal judge's ruling that temporarily blocks his administration from denying asylum claims to migrants who illegally enter the U.S. The president vowing that his administration will fight back.
I'm going to put in a major complaint. Every case that gets filed in the Ninth Circuit, we get beaten, and then we end up having to go to the Supreme Court, like the travel ban, and we won. It's a disgrace what happens with the Ninth Circuit. We will win that case in the Supreme Court of the United States.
Meanwhile, the White House is calling the latest ruling yet another example of an activist judge imposing his open border policy preferences. White House correspondent Kevin Corke is live in West Palm Beach, Florida, near the president's Mar-a-Lago estate, where he and the First Lady are staying today.
Clearly,
and did you get invited to the dinner table?
Let's be honest about it. This is an administration, and White House officials, frankly, will tell you this, that feels like they have been fought at every step along the way by the courts in an effort to enact their policies, only to, after the Supreme Court gets involved, go ahead with the original policies. Doesn't always work out that way, but it certainly has worked out that way in many occasions, Julie. And so obviously there is a great deal of frustration. Let me share part of a quote from the ruling from the judge in question, John Tiggar, district judge over in California. He said asylum seekers will be put at increased risk of violence and other harms at the border, and many will be deprived of meritorious asylum claims. He added this: the government offers nothing in support of the new rule that outweighs the need to avoid these harms. So the ruling means this: now the Trump administration will have to head back to court, and the resulting delay is the real question because, in effect, it prevents the president from enacting his policy goals.
It's very unfair when everybody files their case in the Ninth Circuit. They file it for a reason. This was an Obama judge, and I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen like this anymore.
Now, this is a recurring theme, the president's political and policy opponents using the courts to thwart his will, and the White House would argue the will of the American people. And certainly, Julie, we've seen that play out on multiple occasions, that is, in California, obviously, as well as the infamous travel ban ruling over in Hawaii, and even as recently as this week, the Iraqi illegal immigrant ruling in Michigan, about which the White House press secretary Sarah Sanders said this. Again, speaking of the judge over in California, she said this temporary injunction is yet another example of activist judges imposing their open borders policy preferences, which are rejected by the overwhelming majority of the American people. Also, I can share this with you. We have heard today from the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, John Roberts. Let me share part of a statement that he put out, and it sort of speaks to this idea that there are judges per president. Take a look and see what he says here. He says the U.S. doesn't have Obama judges or Trump judges, Bush judges, or Clinton judges. He added that an independent judiciary is something we should all be thankful for at this Thanksgiving week. Very interesting back and forth, Julie, but for now, back to you.
I need to know if you were invited to the table to share a turkey with the president. No? Didn't get that invite?
Nope, no chance. I will be eating with my crew. Not sure if we're going to do Boston Market or maybe hit a hotel bar. We'll figure it out.
Chick-fil-A is not
Hope you have a good one, though.
Serving up turkey? All right, too bad. Well, in Florida, that's like the most popular go-to. Anyway, for more on this, let's go to Art Del Cueto, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council and a Border Patrol agent in Tucson, Arizona. Thank you very much for talking to us. President Trump, he's slamming a federal judge's ruling, obviously. This judge is trying to temporarily block his administration from denying asylum claims from migrants who illegally enter the U.S. Essentially, that means a floodgate will be allowed. Thousands of illegals to then be granted asylum after they're knowingly, illegally crossing our border. He's calling it very unfair, and he's going to file a major complaint about the Ninth Circuit. Is the White House right that this ruling could open the floodgates?
The President of the United States is 100% right with this. It just amazes me how they use this for their political pondering. The illegals that are entering the country, the Central Americans, regardless, they're breaking into our country, they're creating a crime. It should not have anything to do with political party. We have a president of the United States that cares about this country. I'm so tired of hearing the racist remarks, it's a racial, it has nothing to do with race. Illegal has nothing to do with race. We need to start deciding whether we truly want to defend our country. We need to start deciding whether we want visitors to knock on our front doors or break in through our windows. It's that simple. It has nothing to do with party.
You know, the White House is also basically saying and warning that this is yet another example of an activist judge trying to thwart the president. Is the president right?
He's been right so far on everything he said. I'll be honest. We had a meeting on Monday night with the president. It was a very revitalizing meeting. It gave us a lot of hope. And I 100% stand behind what the president is saying. He cares about this country. He cares about America. He cares about the American people. He cares about the rule of law.
Right.
Why is that such a hard concept for people to understand?
I don't know what is going to happen when Democrats take control in January. But one thing needs to happen is immigration reform, one way or the other. At this point, you have thousands of migrants illegally crossing our border, almost thumbing their noses at U.S. policy, saying we are going to take advantage of every policy out there. You've got asylum, we're going to get it. I mean, how in the world are border agents dealing with this massive influx of migrants?
You know, it's not almost thumbing their nose. They are thumbing their nose.
Well, they're actually giving us the middle finger, but I was trying to be, PC.
Right. But, they're laughing at it. They're laughing at our laws, and people that are running the administration.
Former President Obama as well.
Well, the people that are running the administration have to get on board with what our current president is doing. Our current president is giving the right direction on what needs to be done. Now it's up to the leaders of different organizations to actually do the right thing. Look at what's happening in Tijuana. It's not a racial thing. It's people that are standing up because they believe the rule of law needs to be upheld. If
it's
Americans
also a population
did the same thing,
control
we'd be called
thing.
racist.
In all seriousness, it's a population control thing. It's a taxes thing, and it's an economy thing. And our economy's booming. That's great, but is this going to bring our economy down?
That's why they want to come across, though.
So
but
there's
see,
a
that's
lot
why
more
they want to come
factors.
across.
All right.
That's why they want to come.
Yeah.
The economy's booming.
All right. Yes, unfortunately, the Americans won't be able to enjoy it if they're going to be bombarded by this. But Art Del Cueto, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg standing his ground, saying he's not stepping down amid a series of scandals at the company. He is also expressing his full support for Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg and defended his company on CNN yesterday. Watch this.
There are always going to be issues, but if you're serving a community of more than 2 billion people, there's going to be someone who is posting something that is problematic, that gets through the systems that we have in place, no matter how advanced the systems are. These are complex issues that you can't fix. You manage them on an ongoing basis.
Let's bring in Susan Lee of the Fox Business Network. Yeah, there are problems, all right. 2 billion users, and now our information is no longer private. That is an issue. You are right.
Yeah, that and so much more. For instance, their stock is down 30% on the year. You know, if you're working at Facebook, you're being paid in stock options. That doesn't look good for you. Traffic is down. Young users have been deleting Facebook, and that's on top of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And then the New York Times reports that was explosive last week, suggesting that Facebook has been using an opposition research group that's been peddling conspiracy theories, not just about its competitors, but also, you know, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories that might have involved George Soros. So there's a lot for Mark Zuckerberg to apologize for, at times stammering in that CNN interview, but holding firm, and I would say pushing back, saying, I'm going to be here for a while. He can't really be kicked out since he has 60% of the super voting rights at Facebook, and Sheryl Sandberg, his lieutenant, is going to be with him for decades to come.
Okay, so their stock is falling.
Yeah.
How do they make up for that? That loss? And is it possible that Facebook users, those that haven't deleted and just gone to Instagram, and you mentioned a lot of young people ditching Facebook, so many people have basically said, I'm going to Instagram and that's going to be my
Which they own as well. So there's a silver lining for Facebook. In
there is, but then will Facebook users possibly be incurring charges? Will we actually pay fees for Facebook? I've heard rumors that potentially could happen.
You know, to be honest, the reason why Facebook uses and takes your data is because it's a free service. At the end of the day, when you are using a free service like Facebook, like Google Search, you're
putting
the
it out
product.
there.
Your data is the product. That's what they're selling at the end of the day. So, you know, Facebook has been paying, I would say, a lot this year because they've been losing a lot of users, right? Just with the GDPR, this new privacy rules that came into place over in Europe, it's not as popular with younger folks. You know, I would say that the future right now, the horizon is a little bit cloudy since they have to pay so much more in expenses to hire more people to make sure that their traffic and some of the content on their website and on their platform
what really
is
bothers,
not controversial.
What bothers me on Facebook are the ads. I almost feel like I have a spy behind my back all the time. As someone who spends a lot of time online shopping, especially with Black Friday on this week, at the end of this week.
Spend a lot of time online shopping?
Oh, yeah, I have a serious problem. I mean, there should be a clinic.
We all do.
I should put myself in there for about a year. But nonetheless, you know, when I'm on Facebook and I'm trying to look and see what other friends are doing, I call it Facebook stalking. I don't want to know about the dress I just bought or some potential other outfit that I need to spend money on my child. I don't like the idea that Facebook is watching us all the time.
All the time. So
do we free ourselves by paying a Facebook price in order to get rid of that invasion of our privacy? Because the invasion of our privacy, for me, is a big issue.
Well, Sheryl Sandberg has talked about maybe a paid service for Facebook so they don't take as much of your data. I don't think that's not going to be implemented anytime soon from our outlook. But yeah, you know, actually, the Instagram founders recently left. And the reason why, there have been reports suggesting that Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook leadership wanted to actually use more data, extrapolate more data from your Instagram to know your location so they can place better ads for you and your shopping habits
I don't like
in the
that.
future.
I don't
like that.
No, I feel like I'm being wiretapped.
Right. But they're not the only ones, we should point out. Google also does the same as well.
They sure do. All right, Susan Lee, thank you very much. Great to see you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
So we are just 1 week away from House Democrats' leadership elections, and now Nancy Pelosi is cutting a deal to get Democrat Marcia Fudge to drop her own potential speaker bid. Our power panel will weigh in next. Gavel after Congresswoman Marcia Fudge dropped her threat to challenge her. Fudge says Pelosi has offered to restore a defunct subcommittee on elections and make her the chairwoman. And now one of the 16 House Democrats who signed a letter opposing her for speaker is now endorsing her. Our power panel is here. Capri Cafaro, former Ohio State Senate Democratic Minority Leader, and Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media. It sounds almost like a lot of pressure behind the scenes to get Marcia to drop out. I don't know how comfortable I am with that. I understand, but they were basically saying, you get out, we want Nancy Pelosi, and we'll give you a little reward in the end. But, I mean, did she have any chance, really?
I mean, it doesn't seem that way. I mean, look, I mean, she was never fully in the race to begin with. The group of 16 that signed this letter, and now Brian Higgins from New York State has said, you know, openly he's going to support Nancy Pelosi. There was never a clear front runner. There there was never a clear challenger to Nancy Pelosi, which I think played directly into her hand, saying, showing how skilled she is in regards to whipping votes and being a strong legislator. And I wrote about this actually on FoxNews.com this week.
So, Kevin, Pelosi, she's in. I mean, she's going to be the next speaker. I mean, is it pretty clear?
I don't think that was ever really much in doubt. I agree with Capri. I think that the interesting thing about the group of 16 is that they're going to be kind of like the Tea Party caucus to the Democrats. They're going to be able to push on legislative agenda. But if they were thinking this was going to be a big win for them, they were mistaken.
What does this say
and
about...
it's good to see bribery is alive and well in the
that's
swamp
what I'm
of Washington.
saying. I almost feel like this is really
you want a dead committee?
I
We'll give it to you.
don't know. I mean, it is bribery.
How about a chairperson for it? Yes, okay, we got it.
I mean, it does highlight Nancy Pelosi's skills as a deal maker.
Yeah.
Sure.
But what is it going to do for her in 2 years? Is she doing any damage at all to the Democratic Party for this being such a shoo-in and not allowing somebody else to rise to the ranks?
I've never been, someone out there saying Nancy Pelosi should continue to be at the helm.
Right.
I have advocated for new leadership for years now and supported my Congressman Tim Ryan 2 years ago when he actually challenged Nancy Pelosi in 2016. But there is no challenger.
Right.
As I said before, even Marcia Fudge wasn't really
a lot of people didn't even know who Marcia Fudge was.
And
you need the name.
State,
you need the name recognition,
right?
Though, and Nancy Pelosi has that. I mean, every Democrat in this country knows who Nancy Pelosi is, and nobody raises money.
There's
like
probably
Nancy
only
Pelosi.
one person in the incoming Congress that could have challenged her for the seat legitimately from a name recognition standpoint, and she's never served today.
Right.
Ocasio-Cortez represents the new Democratic Party. It's that progressive end of it that is pushing so hard, and I think Pelosi's got a huge challenge in front of her because she's got everybody in the old caucus. They took some hits in this last election cycle, and everybody that's fresh blood, they all want much different Democratic Party than what Nancy Pelosi presided over last time.
You mentioned the Tea Party, and I think that this is the issue for us as well.
Okay. President Trump defending his daughter Ivanka's emails, her use of private email in particular for government business, saying that it is completely different from what Hillary Clinton did. So is he right? The Power Panel stays next.
Us today, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts issuing a rare statement moments ago. We'll tell you what he's saying. Plus, who are the current frontrunners to take on President Trump in 2020? The Weekly Standard has a new ranking of the Democrats, and we'll break it down. And are you ready for some Black Friday shopping? We'll tell you about some of the best deals out there on the Daily Briefing.
President Trump defending his daughter Ivanka and her use of personal email for government business. This after a White House review showed Ivanka Trump actually sent dozens of government-related emails to and from the account just last year. In fact, these emails started in December of 2016 after the president took office. Now, President Trump dismissing any comparisons between his daughter and Hillary Clinton. Listen.
Ivanka can handle herself. These are all in the historical records. There was no deletion whatsoever, unlike Hillary Clinton, who deleted 33,000 emails. Unlike Hillary Clinton, who had a server in the basement, Ivanka didn't. This was just early on when she came in. These calls were not classified, unlike Hillary Clinton's calls, which were classified. And it's all fake news.
Democrats say they plan to investigate whether any federal record rules were violated. House Oversight Chair Trey Gowdy also requesting information on Ivanka Trump's email practices. Back now with our panel. Our power panel includes Capri Cafaro and Kevin McCullough. All right, Kevin, first of all, the president is basically saying these were not classified emails. I just want to follow up with they also were not deleted. There were not 33,000 of them. They were not destroyed by a hammer. And she does not own a BlackBerry.
No bleach bit.
Okay, so there's no
one owns a BlackBerry in 2018, by the way.
No, you're right. I guess there might be a couple out there, so we apologize for insulting you. But nonetheless, she cannot be compared to Hillary Clinton, although she did something really dumb. She shouldn't have used her personal email. But I think it stops there. And I think the investigation will show that.
Yeah, and I think that Trey Gowdy's doing the right thing. I think if you learn of a violation, you've got to look at it. You've got to say what are the circumstances. Of course. You've got to discover what happened. I think the most important distinctions of all the ones you listed are the ones that she's already turned them into the historical record. They're all preserved.
Right.
And there was no classified information involved. And a rookie coming in, we were talking during the break about Ocasio-Cortez. When you're new at a position, you sometimes don't know everything that you're supposed to know.
It takes some time.
When she found out this less less than 100 batch of emails got turned over, and now she's using the account.
She was also not the former Secretary of State. She was the daughter of an incoming president who had no
First
political.
Lady, or a lawyer, you know, many number of things.
She was a regular person that headed into the White House. I don't know if you can really call any of the Trumps regular people.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You get my point. So, you know,
civilian.
Yes, a civilian. Thank you very much. But you can't necessarily blame her for maybe not understanding fully. However, because the president obviously made Hillary Clinton's emails on a private server such a big deal on the campaign, she should have known better.
Yeah, it's a rookie mistake, I think, where we're at here. And there is, I think, a distinction between an actual email server and, you know, a Gmail or a Hotmail account.
Right.
Now, again, you know, and I've said this before, that the content there could be subject to a public records request, a Freedom of Information Act request, but she's preserved these things, and I think going forward, hopefully, you know, this has been rectified. But look, I agree with you. I mean, the issue here is you learn of a violation or a potential issue, you follow up on it, it takes its course, and I think that's the right thing.
Okay, there's also something to be said by the fact that her own father still uses his personal Twitter account, and I believe he still has access to his personal phone. So
Which is an Android, I think.
Yes, that is true. So sorry, Android users. But nonetheless, you know, she is led by example, and her own father, the President of the United States, actually uses his own phone and his own personal Twitter account. So certainly when she has a shared email, in fact, that Jared Kushner set up for she and him, she wasn't thinking, oh, this is any different.
Yeah, well, how many of us have started a job where for the first couple of weeks, we were sending emails on our own personal account, just getting acclimated to the new office or whatever?
Right.
I really don't think there's anything extraordinary here.
I'm getting a wrap here. We have 5 seconds to get to commercial. More Outnumbered Overtime in just a moment.